All right. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's having a great ACPE. You are in The Speed of Need. It's featuring Todd and Shelby. I'll give them a full intro in a minute. But as we let a few more people trickle in, we'll probably start in 2 minutes. I wanted to ask both Todd and Shelby if they have any good ACPE memories or if they want to air any grievances before we get started. Either way.
Oh, I didn't know we could air grievances.
Yeah, that changes a lot.
I should have let you know, but that's a surprise for you too.
I have a grievance this morning. My computer decided about 15 minutes ago to be a piece of junk and not manage its battery life very well. So that's why my video's off. I'm trying to gather some energy.
Yeah, let it gain strength before you ask it to fly.
Yeah.
I think my personal favorite memory was there were a lot of them.
Yeah, no kidding.
There were a lot of them. Although my first year at ACPE, in the shared North Shore house that we had, I was staying in what some might refer to as a unsafe fire trap of a closet. But other than that, it was a wonderful time.
And there was no egress, huh?
No, there was no egress.
I have a good one. There was a year that Instructure, I think it was Instructure at the Mallards, was doing face tattoos. And John Biggerstaff and Gavin Molitor got face tattoos. And somehow over the course of the night, they got all smeary. And we have these pictures of them looking like they got into like a bar fight or maybe took a face plant in a pile of gravel or something, because these once beautiful sparkly face tattoos turned into like black schmoo all over the sides of their faces. It was amazing.
In all fairness, I believe that evening Gavin did get into a fist fight with the Cisco house sliding glass door.
Yes.
And the door, I believe the door won is what I would.
Yeah, I would take the fists out of that equation. That was more like a face fight.
That's fair.
Oh my goodness. We all miss the mountain, but I hope everybody is having a really good time doing this, and we will certainly enjoy being together in the future. Also, someday we need to discuss what the difference between face tattoo versus face paint is, aside from one sounding a lot cooler.
Yeah, I guess tattoo would be more permanent. Although there was a year that Alan Miedema was convinced to get a neck tattoo. We put a butterfly or something on his neck, and it stayed there for a while. That was pretty cool.
Perfect. I feel like, we could develop a whole system. Like, they have prison tattoos. We could do ACPE tattoos, like one tier for each. I don't know. We'll work on that. We'll workshop that. All right, everyone. Welcome. You are at the speed of need, balancing innovation and standardization. We have with us two folks who do not need introductions, but I will introduce them anyway. We have with us Shelby Reynolds, the Assistant Director for Instructional Technology and Library Services at North Shore School District. We also have Todd Corin, the Director of Digital Resources at Everett Public Schools. We all feel the need for speed, Joe. That's why we're here. So I'm going to pop off stage in just a minute, but throughout, I will ask that you put your questions into the chat box, not the Q&A, but the chat box. Resist your very natural urges. At the end of the presentation, I'm going to hop back on and we'll get to as many questions as we can in the time allowed. But with no further ado, I give you Shelby and Todd.
Thanks, Kelly.
I'm trying very hard not to giggle as I see that Gavin actually responded to the mention of the Cisco Glassdoor incident. So I'm going to get my composure together. Good morning, everybody. We're really happy to be here and share some information with you. If I can get my shared slides together. So my name's Todd, Director for Digital Resources on the LMS team, Learning Management Services team at Everett Public Schools. And I'm very fortunate to say that I spent 5 years working for Shelby Reynolds and on her instructional technology team. Shelby, you should say hi.
Hi, Todd. Hello. Hello, everybody. I'm still the Assistant Director for Instructional Technology and Library Services. And was actually, as much as we give him grief, I was like very sad. I grieve the loss of Mr. Corin. He's definitely left some big shoes to fill. But I do know that he's doing well in his new adventures.
And you got Maddie Oakley in place of me, which is definitely an upgrade.
Yeah.
definitely an upgrade.
We sometimes call Todd Old Maddie instead of calling Maddie New Todd.
And I love it. I love it so much. I do. So we're here today to talk about a problem of practice that Shelby and I have both experienced, both when I was at North Shore and continue to at Everett, which is this sort of duality. We've got the speed of need is sort of referring to this idea of teachers need things now. They want to innovate now. They have a new thing they want to use now. You get told about a program from C-suite that we need to get running now because it is the new focus. It is a linchpin of a program. It is public facing. We got to go now. And the other side of that, of course, is what we know is, but what about data security? What about purchasing procedures? What about data privacy? What about law, federal, state? How do we do both at the same time? How do we find that middle ground that keeps all parties happy and all parties moving forward? And I included the Infinity logo because it never ends. You know, there is never a start and stop to this. It is always constant. There will always be new tools. There will always be new responsibilities that need to be balanced in order to get those in place.
Can I just add a little something there as well?
Always.
For those of you familiar with Polarity Maps, this has definitely been an example of a polarity that we have to manage constantly. And the basic notion of a polarity is that both things that are in seeming opposition are actually both good. Innovation is good and standardization is good, but if you overdo any one of those, you can have ill effects, right? If we focus too much on innovation, we can sacrifice things like standardization or effective use or, quality of material. And if we overdo standardization, we squelch innovation and we squelch people's ability to try new things. And that can be demotivating. So think about that in terms of a polarity. Rob is also saying event diagram. Rob, throw a link to that in the chat. Ah, perfect. Thank you. That's great. Thanks.
Thought maybe that just meant having to vent over the frustration of doing this process.
Which we do.
Awesome.
Todd, any recommendations for how long I can let my battery charge before I can turn my video on?
I mean, it depends how miffed your battery is.
I'm at 28% and I have no other applications running.
Get to 30 and then try it.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
So we have, Todd and I have had the chance to compare organizational culture between North Shore and Everett, which has been really great because our professional relationship gives us a chance to talk pretty often. And since we have some same experiences, it's nice to have that shared story to kind of compare things to. And what we've noticed is that North Shore and Everett, just like any other comparison between two school districts, we have some cultural characteristics that are similar and some that are different. On the similar side, both Everett and North Shore share very strong and very vocal teachers associations who have lots to say about everything from the kinds of tools we use to the procedures we use to pick them. So they're definitely partners in the conversation about innovation and standardization. There's a very strong advocacy in both districts for professional autonomy or professional judgment. So allowing teachers to make good decisions on their own about the kinds of tools and resources they need for students. We both have defined procedures for vetting digital resources. We'll go through those in just a minute. Those procedures, I think it's safe to say those procedures in both school districts are well known by some, but not all. And that provides a little bit of a challenge when trying to get everybody to follow the same set of steps. Both districts have some sort of curriculum committee, some sort of approval committee or oversight committee that approves curriculum adoptions, both supplemental and core. And then we both have this phenomenon that I bet a lot of people in this room experience, which is well, that's technology, so that's your deal. That's your, if it smells like technology, it must be technology's thing to deal with. However, we know that systems are not simply a matter of being technology or not. We have curricular systems, we have operational systems, we have systems that collect student data about athletics or about COVID tests or other things. And so it's not simple enough just to say tech department handles tech, so you guys deal with it. We need other stakeholders as well.
Thinking about the one bullet that Shelby mentioned about professional autonomy in the classroom, there's a phrase that was very popular in my district. It isn't used as much recently, but it's the idea of intellectual freedom and instructional freedom, being able to choose to teach how they want to teach. You know, that feeling of, as a former teacher, I speak from 6 years in the classroom, this idea of being an independent contractor. You know, I work at this school, but this is my classroom, so I teach how I want to teach and use the tools that I want to use. Oh, Shelby's back with aviators.
I have them over my glasses though, so I can actually see.
You look like a rock star.
I'm gonna lean way back like Iceman does all the time in his chair.
Hey, you're dangerous.
That's right.
I'm not going to do the biting thing because that's
right.
Yeah.
No, wait, that means I'm not.
It's fine. Moving on. Differences between our school districts, our organizations. There's some socioeconomic demographic differences. In Everett, it's definitely school by school and a geographical kind of split. Community engagement can vary between the two organizations. I think North Shore is very much a very empowered, very involved community. And I think in Everett, there's more pockets. Same thing with that pockets with the knowledge about data privacy. Different attitudes about how to vet resources, and we're going to get to that a little bit more as we talk about the procedures that the different districts take. Siloed versus interconnected technology departments. So even architecturally speaking, if you walk into the North Shore technology wing, you're going to see essentially a very large room with some offices and some cubes, but it is one big room and all the different teams are sort of together. At Everett, it is a long hallway and there's legitimately walls almost separating the different teams. And so architecturally and then also kind of spiritually, because of the history of the tech department at Everett, it's been, you know, kind of separated and put together, and this piece comes in and this piece goes out. There's a lot of silos there that they're still working to break down to build communication. And then the who does the review is also a little bit different. I play a very large role in doing a lot of the review at Everett, which we're going to talk about a little bit more, whereas at North Shore, you know, Alan Miedema handles a big portion of that, and he's the director of the entire department. So having that kind of level is a little bit of a different take on how things go. So procedures, you're going to see, we're going to talk about Everett's first, and then we're going to, I know that that's supposed to be a fighter pilot in the corner, but it definitely took me a minute. Weird alien like, soccer ball.
Yeah, okay, but it looks like the pilot in the MiG in Top Gun. You know, he's all like dark and covered up, and you can't see him. And
yeah, no, I get it. It's just it threw me.
It's not an alien.
It's fine. Moving on.
Yeah.
You'll see similarities between Everett and North Shore again, but you'll see some differences as well. So if a teacher wants to get a new tool reviewed, the first step is going to be to check the list in the digital tools portal in Canvas. And I'll jump to show you what this looks like. So this is, Canvas is our adopted LMS. We also utilize Google Classroom, and there was some Seesaw this year. So there's some other things, but every teacher does have a Canvas course, and we use it as sort of our intranet as well. We're moving a lot of resources from password protected on the website to moving it into Canvas, into different portals that we're calling them. We've got curricular portals, we've got technology portals, and now we've got this digital tools portal. And it houses things like information on our review process, the approved tools list, collections of adopted and supported tools, and then resources and documentation for those as well. We haven't talked about it yet, but one thing that's been a struggle is getting the org to understand the difference between an adopted and supported tool versus an approved tool. And the biggest difference there is support. If we approve a tool, you're welcome to use it with these guidelines, but don't ask us for help. We're not going to help you integrate it. We're not going to help you troubleshoot. If something's being blocked on the firewall, we'll take a look at that, and that's about it. Versus if something is adopted and supported, we're doing integrations. We are running support with the vendor. We have tickets open with them. So that's more of a full adopted tool. Normally that's something that the district or a district body pays for, whereas an approved tool isn't.
Todd, do you find that users in your districts understand the nuances between those two things, or is that more like an internal departmental way to categorize things?
We're building that in. That's something that we've really focused on trying to push out more. And we've had a lot of changes in the model of instructional technology support in Everett. So even as recently as last year, there was essentially one instructional technology facilitator at each level. And now we've moved to, at the high school, we have subject area tech leads, we call them, that are really focused on using the technology in their specific curriculum area. Mm-hmm. And then at the middle schools, we have 4 middle schools. And for those 4 middle schools, we have 2 facilitators that are a little bit more, here's how to use the tool, a little less curricular focused. And at elementary, we're building back into that same idea of having leads. But we're trying to use those folks to push out this information and understanding. We've communicated it many times, but as with anything, technology and training, it's only as good as the eyes that see it, mm-hmm. right? So it's always ongoing work to get that information, that understanding out.
And are those leads and facilitators extensions of your department, or are they school staff?
So the leads are school staff. They are teachers who 0.2 of their FTE is being the tech leads. Other than the rest of the point is they're teachers. The middle school facilitators are separate. They report directly to the tech department, but directly to the CIO. Mm-hmm. They were originally a body that was reporting directly to an assistant superintendent. So a lot of history there. Mm-hmm. They were almost free agents, kind of doing what they felt was the right thing versus being extension of the technology department. Whereas I know at North Shore, you guys have your STS model. You are truly extensions of the tech department.
Yeah, truth. We'll talk about that in just a minute.
Yeah. So in the tools portal in Canvas, the first step is check the list. So we've got an approved digital tools list. We originally had that broken down into program areas, and then we just kind of merged it into one place for everybody to see. And it includes the name of the tool. It would have been nice if I actually had that. I don't know why I didn't. But the name of the tool, the age level it's approved for, and any guidance around its use. Be sure parents are contacted, or you need parent permission, or there's age restrictions, things like that.
We can show that at the end if folks want to look at it.
So they go there, they check the list. If it's not there, they submit a help desk ticket. And that ticket comes to me, and I facilitate that. We use ServiceNow as our ticketing system, and it has a whole flow for the digital tools review. Once it comes in, and I've ensured that it has everything we need, a few different groups take a look at that resource. First, I review the privacy policy and the terms and the tool itself from an LMS standpoint. I'm looking for anything privacy in terms that jumps out. Are you selling our data? Are you protecting? Are you following the basic FERPA stuff? Pretty basic on that point. I'm looking to see what sort of information it collects. I'm looking to see how kids get in, if they need accounts, looking to see how long they hang on to our information, things like that. At the same time that I'm doing that, the purchasing department or head of purchasing actually reviews the contract or the terms of use, depending. And then also, I feel really fortunate, our legal counsel actually reads the documents as well. We have a full legal read of every term and privacy policy that goes through. Now, their notes are not presented as from legal. Their notes are presented by the purchasing department as part of the purchasing review. But I feel really lucky and fortunate that we do have that read. And then we also get a technical review from our head of network, Ken Toyne, and he's looking to see if this tool is going to play nice with our student devices, if the tool is going to impact our network in any way, things like that. And then we also, the last part is a curricular read. Now I have that at the end, but that's actually very recently been moved. This process is ongoing. We've moved that curriculum read to the very top. And now if anything comes in that I feel smells of curricular, if it is, especially if it's got any sort of library or community of users, I'm starting with the curriculum department, and they are essentially, they have been given the yes or no. So if they feel like this is curricular, they can shut it down right now before it gets to any more of those reads. Assuming it goes through all those reads and everything looks good, it'll get either approved or denied for use with specific guidance that I share. And we already talked about the portal a bit. Shelby, any questions in the chat that we should pause for?
No.
No, we're good?
Yep.
Awesome. So let's talk about North Shore.
Yeah, let's. No alien icon on this one.
Oh.
So our process is similar in steps, I suppose. There are definitely some parallels between Everett and North Shore in that way. We do have a list of software. It includes everything that's ever been reviewed since the dawn of time, and includes even those things that have been denied and for what reason. It's not, I don't think it's widely known across our district, this list, because part of our procedure is that we make folks fill out the digital resource request form regardless of whether something has been approved in the past. The reason for that is it gives us a chance to check and see if the terms or privacy policies have been updated since the last review. And also because there are different use cases from teacher to teacher. A teacher in 2nd grade might use a tool generically without student accounts, and a teacher in 6th grade might use a resource with specific student accounts. So that changes the nature of the data that's being passed. So regardless of where something falls on that, that giant list of software, we ask that people fill out the digital resource review anyways. The fill out the form step in North Shore is not directly a work order or a ticket. We have a Google form that I'll show you in just a minute that is used whenever somebody wants to request use of a free, a paid, or anything else digital resource, including renewals. So if a school has subscribed to something like Raz Kids for the year, in order to process that renewal, they need to fill this form out again and include all of the information about the renewal, and including budget information and quotes and all of those things. Because a few years back, just to try to corral the rogueness out in the field and to try to, reduce some of the Wild West behavior, we worked with our purchasing department to streamline all technology purchases through the technology department. And so every subscription, every database, every, whether it be a district-wide, school-wide, or individual subscription, all of those come through the technology department. So we have folks fill out this Google form. It generates information to me. I do a quick review. And like Todd, that is the point at which I look at that resource and say, is this curriculum? Does this smell like curriculum? And if it does feel like curriculum and somebody's trying to purchase it or somebody's trying to move forward with it without it going through our curriculum materials review process, I reroute that request over to our curriculum and instruction folks to make sure that they're on board and understand that this is a request.
Shelby, do you ever get pushback from curriculum at that point where they say, no, we don't think this is curriculum?
Sometimes. I've been on our curriculum review team for like 15 years, so I've gotten pretty good at knowing their preferences. So I generally can look at the request and know how they're going to come down in terms of the assessment of whether or not it's curriculum. Sometimes I will add, if I know something about the tool, I might add context for our curriculum folks just to say, you've probably never seen this before, but here's what I know about it. We have a slide on curriculum characteristics a little bit later, and having, spent a lot of time with those, I know what things to look for that they'll be looking for as well. So
sure.
I don't tend to get a lot of pushback there, but I do get pushback on other things, which we'll talk about later. We do also have a provision in our curriculum review process that allows for a field test. So if something is curricular in nature and it's a digital resource, they still need to do the digital resource review process, but they'll indicate in that review that it's a field test, and then that gets like semi-approved by the curriculum team. At least they get notified, the principal's on board with it. There's a limit to the time that something can be field tested, and then it has to go back through an official curriculum review and potentially a purchase and or adoption. So there are definitely some nuances in that fill out the form step, but before a work order, an actual like do something about this work order gets created, there's definitely some conversation that happens there. Once we determine that something should proceed with the review process, I create a work order we're using Web Help Desk now. We're about to transition to Incident IQ. If anybody's an Incident IQ user here that can coach me on how to do approvals and Incident IQ, I'd love to talk to you at some point. But we use an approval flow within Web Help Desk to route the digital resource request first to Alan, who does the terms and privacy review. And he's got his own kind of side database going of things that are in the SDPC database and or vendors who've signed off on the Washington State Student Data Privacy Agreement. And that's a really handy way to sort of quickly process some of these things. Over the years, I think we've greatly reduced the amount of time it takes to turn over digital resource reviews, especially for vendors who've signed off on those state-specific or consortium-specific agreements, which is really nice. If there's a purchase involved, again, whether it's a specific, like for one user, a subscription, or it's a school-based or a district-based subscription, all of those purchases route to a purchasing tech in our department, who then creates the PO or uses a P card to produce the purchase and notes everything and makes all that stuff happen. We've also we've collaborated with our purchasing department to recognize if a school tries to put in a purchase request for anything that smells like a digital resource, they know to kick that purchase request back to the school and tell them to go through the DRR process. And that's been highly successful. We've been able to kind of curb both the I'm just going to skip over the process phenomenon and also catch people who weren't aware that there was a process in place. So having that partnership with purchasing has been really great.
We have the same partnership that's really starting to come to fruition this year. I would say once a week I get an email from different folks in purchasing and accounting saying this came through on a P card purchase. I don't see it on the tools, the approved list. Do you need to take a look? Yeah. And that's saved us quite a few times.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Then we,
sorry.
Okay, that last step is really just approval or not approval. We do have sometimes conditional approval where the terms of use require explicit parental permission, where they forbid, a school district acting as the family's agent or something like that. So we do have a number of tools that are approved with conditions, either by grade level or with the need for some sort of permission slip. And that permission slip thing, I think, still is an area that needs some attention and work because we don't have, unfortunately, a standard form necessarily that's used for permission gathering. We've certainly created some templates and kind of sent them out into the field. Schools take some liberties with adjusting those forms and things. So I definitely think that's an area that we could spend some time working on.
Everett has some templates in the procedures for that particular board policy. Mm-hmm. It is rare that folks know that exists, and even rarer that they use it the way they exist. So
when you say policy, are you talking about 2022P?
Yeah, I forget exactly what number it is, but yeah,
but your responsible use procedure.
Yeah, in the responsible use procedure, and we may have a separate document. I think we have a separate board policy and procedures that's specifically around third-party digital tools.
Yeah,
I forget the exact wording, and it includes different templates for permissions and different either I'm creating my own website, or I'm just giving you a heads up, or I'm using this tool. We have a couple of different templates built in there.
Interesting. Yeah. And does your RUP include any kind of language or sort of broad statement about we will sign your kid up for these services and we will do our due diligence in protecting their data?
Where I cannot speak to that at this moment because we are doing some work around our forward-facing communication on that.
Yeah.
So that's actually something I may have borrowed some language from the North Shore website as I'm building out our own page kind of around that information.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of specific, permission slip things in board policy or procedure, because when we wrote our RUP, and it's probably due for a refresh, FYI, we put language in there in an attempt to cover and to sustain over time the coverage of, digital tools change all the time, and we have a process by which we keep your kids' data safe. But we're not going to ask you every single time we sign your kid up for a thing. We're just, this is the notification. And if you want to opt out, there is a procedure for that. But our opt out in North Shore is like a full opt out. We don't do a custom like, well, I don't like Google products, so I don't want my kid doing anything with Google, but they can do everything else. Like opt out is like no services at all.
It's the same in Everett. It's basically you either get internet or you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Too hard to customize for sure.
Yeah.
So this is just a quick screen grab of the page within our toolbox. Much like Everett has a portal within Canvas, we maintain an inward intranet called our teacher's toolbox or staff toolbox. And there's a whole bunch of pages within there supporting instructional tech. And one of those is a page that describes our digital resource review. And go back a step, Todd. And this page, unfortunately, doesn't get as much visibility with our teachers as I would hope it would. But we've actually developed a whole set of selection guidelines that we, I share these with teachers and STSs, school technology specialists and principals. But it's a long list of things to be looking for when they're looking at digital resources. And I think we all know that the bright, shiny object and the emails you get on a constant basis telling you about this great new tool, or in the case of the shift to remote, the proliferation of vendors reaching out saying, we're going to give you this thing for free, has prevented people from taking those important steps of like really looking at the resources. And not just from a privacy and, terms of use standpoint, but from a, is it even good? There's been so much saturation of the market with, sending teachers free things and trials and all kinds of stuff that I think, in some cases, teachers are forgetting to take that important step of stepping back and evaluating it. Like, it's free, so it must be great. The QR code on the screen there points you to a copy of the selection guidelines that we share with folks. So you're welcome to take a look at that if you like. I've also created a copy of the form that I referred to earlier. This is our digital resource review form. You're welcome to fill it out. It's not going to go anywhere, but you can see what the questions look like. I just grabbed some stats yesterday. We've had 623 submissions to that form since February of 2020, which is the last time I reworked the form. I'd have to go back and look at before then. We've had the form in place for several years, but it's pretty telling that in, 14, 15 months or something here, we've had 623 submissions. Everything from I want to use a free resource to I'm renewing something to district level subscriptions and what we call CMAC reviews, which are the digital resource review that comes with a curriculum adoption. So if we're going to renew or adopt, Fountas and Pinnell something or other, part of the approval process for our curriculum team is there needs to be a complete digital resource review with that. We added some questions, I think it was around February 2020, if not before then, but there's 4 questions we added to the front to put it in people's faces. And so, some of these requirements and expectations. So if this is instructional, it needs to go through the CMAC process. They have to check that box. Our expected time frame in North Shore can be anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. Most of them are faster than that, especially since vendors have started to sign off on the Washington Student Data Privacy Agreement, or have been reviewed and cataloged in the SDPC resource library, I think it's called, or resource finder. So it's been really handy to have some of those consortiums and agreements in place. There's a statement there that says don't use it until it's approved. However, we can't do anything to prevent I mean, short of blocking something in the filter, we can't do anything to prevent a teacher from using an unapproved or unreviewed resource. In fact, I got one DRR yesterday from a school who has already signed up to use a tool on Saturday with families and students for some sort of family math night or something like that. And it was sort of like a, oops, we only found out about it because they had some Vimeo videos that needed to be unblocked. We're like, I only done a DRR for that. But literally, unless we, block it in the filter and take a bunch of extraordinary steps, we can't prevent them from using it. So, and then there is a statement that says if you don't provide all the stuff, like if we don't have a quote or a description of the purchase or a budget number, it's going to take longer for you to get your review completed. So again, grab that bit.ly link and feel free to take a look at the form if you like.
I think doing your best to teach your staff and your organization what a digital tool is really important. I reminded Shelby of something when we were prepping, and I think she must have blocked it out of her memory. But right about when she was putting together this form and reworking this process, Shelby actually emailed all the teachers at North Shore to give them kind of a heads up about this process needing to be done. And she was getting frightened messages from all over the place about, like, I use Google, is that okay? like everything, because there's, what is a digital tool? What is a digital resource?
What about mail, Todd?
Yeah,
Do
mail's
I have to put in a DRR for mail?
I sent an email today. Is that, do I have to put a DRR for that?
Do I have to put in a DRR for Google Slides and Google Docs?
There's two different things.
Yeah, because it's two different tools.
The website's different.
Yep.
Shelby, I can't see my notes since I'm sharing. Am I going first?
Yeah, you're top row.
Okay. That's exactly what we said we weren't going to do, right? We weren't going to do that. Who's talking? Is it me? Is it you?
Conversational. Nobody in the audience.
Fine.
There's no facial. I can't see anybody's
It's okay.
faces.
Yeah, it's just gray. It's fine.
No heckling. Everybody's asleep or they're
Yeah.
pouring something fancy into their cup or something. I don't know.
Shelby, I was answering some questions from an Everett standpoint. So if you wanted to go back and look through and throw in any North Shore things, feel free to.
Will do.
So starting to talk about some of the challenges that we face in this process. Again, innovation versus standardization. Immediacy. Why can't I use it now? I'm already using it. What if someone I know is already using it? I have a lesson planned for tomorrow. You are ruining my lesson planning. This has been the most stressful teaching year of my life. I've almost quit 4 times, and now you have completely destroyed my planning because you won't let me use this tool that I know is fine. I mean, how I've gotten that email like 4 times in the last 2 months, and I really truly feel for them. And at the same time, I'm not going to let you use a free flight simulator with an unmoderated chat that says users must be 16 and up, and you want to use it at the middle school level.
My favorite one recently.
I can't do that.
Everyone here will appreciate this. My favorite one recently was, I guess it was a couple months ago, was I've set up a Discord server for my fill in the blank class, and it's getting blocked. Can you unblock it? And no DRR. It's Discord, like there's so many things just not great about that. And it represents that during COVID, I've seen an increase in a desire to provide ways for kids to interact with each other. And yet a lack of recognition of what kind of data we're exposing to whoever and wherever in doing, in trying to meet that need.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's been a tough year for that, for sure. Awareness. So where's the form? What's the form? There's a form process. What's the process? I just want to use this thing. I didn't have to use this last time. What do you mean there's a process? So building that into the organization, both Everett and North Shore have these wonderful websites full of information and documentation and how to, and let me help you do this. But how many folks actually know about them, know to use them, know to go there and find that info? Training. What do these terms mean? Why is this important? Again, approved versus adopted and supported. That's an ongoing struggle as we kind of work that through and help folks understand what that means. Helping folks understand, North Shore has those guidelines, which I think is great. And I think it's something Everett needs to build in. But like the red flags that I look for, I do not have a law background. I do not have a contracts background. I do not have the federal work level background that other people do. I can still look through a terms of use document and be able to spot if something looks horrifying. I can spot anything you do becomes property of the company, right? Things like that I would want to know if I was sending my children to do work on this website. So whilst I certainly don't expect a teacher to read through terms of use documents, that idea of knowing what to look for does not have to be a complex thing.
In terms of innovation, Todd spoke to this a little bit earlier too, especially on that first slide when we were sort of defining the issue. Teachers in North Shore, and I think in Everett too, think of themselves not independent contractor is a term that we throw around a lot, but Mike had something in the chat earlier that was a great reminder that contractors are in charge of their own support and infrastructure. You hire an independent contractor to do things and they come with some built-in support and sort of guarantees and things like that. I would say free agent maybe is a term that Todd used earlier that's a little bit maybe more accurate here, but there's definitely some, especially in North Shore, there's definitely some, I would say, entitlement. Like I am a teacher, I am trusted to pick things that are good for my students, and I should have the sort of intellectual freedom to pick the things that I think are best without regard to the systemic impacts that might have, or the privacy and data concerns, or whether or not I'm actually telling parents of my students that I'm using this. I mean, there's just a lot of, I'm going to say, entitlement. That tends to be a bit of a trend. I will also say, as younger teachers come into the profession, there's a lot of work to be done in that generation as well, because there's just a mentality that you can find things so easily on the web, and you can information and resources are so prevalent and so abundant that there's not that moment of like, wait, what data am I giving away? Is this okay? How does the use of this tool fit in with the systemic or organizational expectations that I have for my job? So it's definitely we want to encourage innovation, but not at the expense of data security or good content. North Shore also has a very strong and very technologically adept parent community. So we're right in Microsoft's backyard. We have a lot of families that live, especially on the east side of our district, that work for Microsoft or work for Google or work for other high-tech companies. And so it is not infrequent. It is not unusual for Alan or me or other folks in leadership roles to receive queries from parents, who are reaching out to us directly and saying, I noticed that my student's teacher is using this thing, and I was reading their terms of use, and I take exception with this particular clause. It is not unusual at all for that to happen. And especially with the shift to remote learning and the increase in not only the use of digital resources, but the engagement of our families in their students' education and their ability to see on a daily basis the kinds of tools that are being used in instruction. There's this exposure that we've never had before that is definitely in North Shore. I'm not sure about Everett, but definitely increasing parent involvement in asking these questions, which is really great. It's really great, but it is creating some urgency around making sure that we have really good outward-facing information to help families understand the processes that we use to vet our resources. And then, of course, social media is definitely a thing. When we went all in with Google, there was a phenomenon at the time, where people were questioning Google's data practices, and there was this term scroogling, and I got so many emails from parents and community members and saw on the socials, like people upset that we were giving kids' data away to Google. And Alan and I both spent a lot of time with Google's education data privacy, resources, and getting that information out to the community. And North Shore has a very, very active social media presence among its community members and parents. And it's really hard to prevent misinformation from being shared in such a vibrant community. So over the years, I've cultivated some relationships with people who administer some of those Facebook groups, and I've been trying really hard to keep on top of some of the misinformation that's there and sort of correct it by having conversations with the admins. But that's other duties as assigned, right? I don't know if any of you have to do that, but that could be a 24-hour job, just trying to stay on top of the junk that's out there on social media to help people, get the right information.
I'm also thinking about, Shelby, that, even now for a lot of folks, the attitude towards those unofficial Facebook parent groups can often be, if you work in the district, don't read it, don't look at it, abandon all hope, ye who enter here, kind of thing. Yeah. But at the same time, as you're pointing out, that's a serious trouble. That's a boulder, right? That misinformation pool is a boulder, and so by doing what you're doing and having those relationships, even though it is other duties as assigned, it plays a really important role in the work you're doing.
There's a great, thank you. There's a great question in the chat about doing annual outreach to the community. I wouldn't say we have anything formal, like there's not an annual, like this is our parent education night. We do from time to time take steps to make sure that we're getting out to the community and sharing information. We've done webinars, we've produced little videos, we've shared documentation, we've shared information with principals to put in newsletters. I have a pretty strong connection with the PTAs in our district, and so I'm constantly feeding them information as well. Unfortunately, the people who sometimes need to hear the information are not necessarily engaged in any of those channels, and so it's tough to make sure that we're really getting to all the nooks and crannies of the district. And Jennifer's question is good and related to this. The information that we do share is consistent with what's in the responsible use procedure. So, things like we have a vetting process. Here's what it looks like. Your student will be using tools such as, this, that, and the other thing. We do create email accounts, and here's how that's structured at K-5 and at 612. We do try to be as transparent as possible, but again, it's sort of an ongoing challenge. And I think in my utopia, we would have somebody on staff.
Now you have my attention.
Yeah, we would have somebody on staff whose job it was to support families for a whole variety of technological implementations. So for example, with our SIS, there's a whole parent portal, there's a whole parent side of that. And we've increased the urgency and the requirement for parents to engage in that in parent view in our SIS in order to fill out forms and do the COVID attestation and do all these things. And for the most part, we have, parents who oblige and do what they need to do. There's certainly the hiccups and bumps, but we have a population in North Shore, and I'm certain this is true in Everett, that have language barriers or who have technological barriers. And we are not resourced to provide the lovely blend of both bilingual and technical expertise to be able to provide outreach to those families that needs, very specific support. And that's just one tool. That's just Parent View. I mean, we launched Clever this year. We launched Schoology. Teachers are using a whole bunch of different tools. There's different places, online textbooks and Pear Deck and all of these things. And if our families are not equipped or supported in the way that they need to be in order to access these tools, then we're missing out on that opportunity to support students at home. So again, I would love to have somebody on staff who was a family outreach technology coordinator or something like that, because I think that could be a really valuable asset in bringing that community into the conversation.
Yeah, I would support that FTE for sure. The few things that Everett's been able to do in terms of that, because we too would need someone full-time on staff. We developed, when we went to remote learning, we developed something called Parent University, which is a series of videos walking them through how to do some specific things. And it's growing and growing. We've had a lot of success with that. But even then, language barrier, it's only as good as YouTube's translation for closed captioning, which is, depending on the language, reliable or not. But I really like that idea of having that full-time person who's just working to support families. in using these resources. I'll also say, and I'm sure this isn't something new, but we're starting to hear more and more from parents. I know that my supervisor, Joanne Butawag, was on the phone yesterday with another parent, essentially begging for streamlining of tools. Tell me you use these 4 things and end of list. And so
I want to talk about that. That's going to come up on our curriculum slide, which I think is next, because
we'll talk about that then.
That has been a huge hurdle in North Shore. I can't. This is a problem of practice I would love to chew on with a group of people, because for years now we've seen the explosion of the use of digital resources in classrooms. We've seen people recognizing that there might be a hole in our core curriculum in terms of helping to differentiate for students in numeracy or language development or word work or whatever. And so teachers with the best of intentions are running out to go find all these things, and vendors are happy to oblige, right? And for the most part, vendors are fine. They're great, whatever. What I'm struggling with is our curriculum and instruction department, these are all lovely people, very, astute, very wonderful, good at their job people. There's this reluctance or resistance to making any sort of recommendation about what the good stuff really is. And I think it's back to that, a little bit of it is back to that, well, that's technology, and so it's not in my house, or it's not in my lane, or it's not my responsibility. And math is such a great example. We have a fairly aged math curriculum that we haven't sort of filled the gaps supplemental resource-wise. We haven't really filled any of those, the gaps that curriculum has or retains. And so teachers are out there picking Prodigy Math, iExcel, Extra Math, Happy Numbers, it's all over the map, right? And they're all curricular. And so they've all had to go through the curriculum review process. And about 2-3 years ago, I went to the curriculum folks and I said, it'd be a lot easier on both our curriculum adoption folks, our committee, and on teachers if we could just pick, if we could identify what the holes are in math expressions and then just pick, the 4 tools that you as a curriculum department would recommend. And it just stymied them. And it's a problem of practice. I could use some help thinking about that. But there was this inability or this disinterest in making such a recommendation. And we're still today, a couple of years later, I still get reviews for the newest math thing that's out there. And if we had a standard set of core tools and supplemental tools, I think the number of digital resource review requests would shrink, because we would be supplying people with those things to plug the holes.
So let me, same idea, but from a little bit of a different angle. Everett has recently adopted at the middle and the elementary school illustrative math as the curriculum, core curriculum, which is an OER. And you can get illustrative math files that work with Canvas, that work with Google Classroom, that work with Seesaw, that work with anything. And because of the negotiation and because of the expectation of what's going to be available for teachers, you may have one math teacher, a 3rd grade math teacher, having their kids use them in Canvas, and another 3rd grade math teacher next door using Seesaw, and another one next to them using Google Classroom. That's 3 different platforms that 3 different students are logging into to get to the same core curriculum. Yeah. Right? And although the core curriculum is, and that's not even counting the the third-party digital tools that are also floating around.
Yeah, for sure. For some reason, what you were just talking about reminded me of an ongoing struggle we have with Khan Academy, where, when Khan was first a viable thing out there, I actually brought it to our curriculum committee chair, and I said, hey, people are going to start using this. There's nothing, unless we block it, people are going to start using it. Don't you think we should send it through the curriculum review process to either approve it as a supplemental or a core tool? And the response I got, which I continue to get on a lot of other tools to this day, and I think we'll talk about Nearpod, which you had mentioned has that content library. The response I get is, well, we can't possibly review Khan Academy. Would we have to look at every single video? Would we? How could we possibly make an approval for that? The same is true for back in the day, we had Discovery Streaming, which was this huge content library of instructional videos. And I was like, maybe CMAC needs to look at this and make sure that it passes muster. And there was this like, oh God, no, like we can't. Are we going to open Pandora's box and have to approve YouTube? Because that's full of instructional content. Like it's so funny to me that it's easy to draw this line depending on where you are and what your role is on what is curriculum and what is not. And for some people, I don't know, for me, I guess that line can be a little blurry at times. And it makes it hard to try to establish a set of procedures that people can stick to.
Well, so since you brought up Nearpod, and I'm keeping track of time, I think we are an hour 15 or an hour 30.
Yeah, I think we're done at 11:30.
Okay. Well, then I'm not as worried this time. Yeah. But speaking about Nearpod, so talking about the challenge, is it curriculum? So Nearpod in Everett. So beginning of the school year, a couple of those facilitators who at the time were still a little bit of free agents, were doing trainings at their buildings on Nearpod. Nearpod is not an adopted tool in Everett. And we were getting review requests for building-wide purchases of Nearpod. And I pushed for curriculum to be involved because Nearpod, not only do they have a huge curricular library of resources, but it's a huge selling point of the tool. Here's tons of curriculum resources that you can use that technically could be used to supplant, not supplement even, but supplant core curriculum. And so we went to the curriculum department and said, is this curriculum and do you approve of its use? And for Nearpod specifically, the language was very clear. They chose to approve it for 1 year only, 1 year purchase. So after that year is up, going into next year, I don't think Nearpod will be an approved tool because of how much curricular content is in the resource. And if you think about it more and more, if that's your read on it, right? If that's the read, you take a look at Seesaw and think about how much user-created curricular content is in there. Think about all the things that people have made all over the world for Google and all the different curricular like once you get into that water, it is murky and it is deep.
Yeah.
And it's hard to keep it straight.
If it's only approved for a year and people invest a lot of time and energy in it, and then you take it away, like what does that? Have you ever tried to take a valuable resource away from teachers?
I have been a part of it. It's not pleasant.
It hurts.
We've been reminded we're an hour and 15, not an hour 30. FYI, Shelbs.
Oh, so we're done in 15 minutes. Got it.
Yes.
So talking then, Todd.
Sorry, I apologize. I'm gonna stop talking now.
Your ego's writing checks your body can't cash.
Wow.
That's a quote from Top Gun.
I know. I'm gonna sit with that for a minute, though. Okay. I need to. That was a lot.
Go to the next slide. Go to the next one. Let's talk about this next thing because we've been talking about these, right?
Yep.
We talked about the first part, the curriculum department being shy about taking on those services and making recommendations. And the big one is, well, if we approve it and then the content changes, do we have to review it again? Like on what cycle do we have to look at that content over and over and over again?
Yeah, I mean, ideally we'd want to look at all tools for terms changes and privacy policy changes yearly, right?
Yeah. That's
a lot of work. Who's got the time? Who do we assign for that?
Yeah, and the picking fights with teachers is interesting because in North Shore, this manifests as my friend at Shelton View has been using this tool and I want to use it too. Do I have to do a DRR since they already did one? And my answer is always yes, because your use case may be different than theirs. The terms may have changed. We want to make sure that we're doing due diligence, et cetera, et cetera. And there's this that's lame. It's already been, it's already been approved, or that whole school got approval. Does our school need to put in for approval too? Or they already purchased it. Can I just piggyback on theirs? And the answer is always no, do your own. And that creates some ill will with schools and with teachers.
We, our current struggle with this idea is, so it's two parts, same vendor. So our district allows for buildings to apply to our categorical department for funding for resources, and categorical either approves or denies those requests for funding. One of those resources was reading eggs. In the past, it's been approved before curriculum really was looking at things. Now curriculum looked at it and said, this isn't our literacy curriculum. We're not going to approve this request. So already you are taking away a thing that teachers have been using for years.
Yeah.
And then it came up that, but on the list is this other tool called Math Seeds, which is from the same vendor. Why can we use it in math but not use it in English? Yeah. And whilst that question comes to technology, as you all on this meeting know, that is not a technological question to answer. Yeah. That is curriculum's duty to answer, but we keep that list. So we're the ones who have to kind of foster that conversation. And curriculum needs to be the ones to say, you're right, we're going to take this on and have that conversation. And I'll tell you right now, Math Seeds is on our list and Reading Eggs isn't.
Yeah, interesting. You just made me think of a situation we had a year or two ago. We adopted TCI's science curriculum for K-5, and it's great. There's a lot of online content. It's good. It's standards aligned, whatever. We did not at the time also adopt any sort of supplement to fill any gaps or anything that might be present in the curriculum. So a number of teachers across the district started seeking out some of those resources and stumbled across Mystery Science. And it caught like wildfire. People got super excited about Mystery Science. And at some point it did go through the DRR process, and then it was recognized, at the time that I think the submission was put in, that, hey, that's curriculum, we should take it through CMAC. And somehow the community got wind of it, and there were actually people giving public comment at a school board meeting about and it was more about the curriculum and less about it being a digital resource, but you've just reminded me that we've had several instances where our engaged community has taken issue with something that has been, even vetted through the digital resource process, and even, at least field tested or reviewed and approved by the curriculum folks, but that our community took issue with. Another one was, I think it was Happy Numbers, and there was another app that came through at that same time. If any North Shore folks remember that, it was a Kathy Hink initiative, Happy Numbers, and there was another little app that she was using with younger kids that, again, we had vetted and approved, and CMAC had looked at, and everything was fine. And for whatever reason, we had some engaged community members that stood up and said, this is not great. And so then we're struggling with, who's going to trump who here? Like, is it more important for us to go back and review curriculum approvals, or should we tell, the community that, we've done our due diligence, we think this is good curriculum? That was really tricky.
We had one, there was, I think maybe it was, I won't say the name of the tool because maybe I don't want to throw anything under the bus, even though I don't think anyone who works for the tool is on this call, but there was a tool that was really popular because it was free, and then it came out that the company that runs the tool is a funder of the Church of Scientology, and there was this huge we should not be getting your kids off this thing, but then teachers were like, but it's a good tool, and again, not a technology decision to make, but it certainly falls into a realm.
So North Shore has we have another interesting little phenomenon going on where impatient teachers, or teachers who are not aware that there is a process, go out and purchase a subscription to something. And it presents this entirely different set of complications, because if I go out and purchase something with my own account and my own credit card and all of that stuff, and then I ask for reimbursement, there's this question of ownership. Like, how does the district, if I reimburse that teacher, or if I get reimbursed because I made a purchase, how does the district take ownership of that account? Or at least make an attempt to do that, because I've done it on my own credit card. So we have quite a few, especially since COVID, since the shift to remote, a lot of teachers out there buying subscriptions to things that they, haven't taken through the DRR process, or that have been approved and they've just gone out and purchased their own subscriptions because they didn't understand that there was a purchasing process. So reimbursement continues to be a challenge. And for those teachers that are out there purchasing things and never asking for reimbursement and never doing a digital resource review to get reimbursed, which is what they have to do, then we've got this whole issue of liability. If they've subscribed to something on their own and they've given away student data, I think there's not a lot of awareness out there. They're creating some liability issues if there were to be a data breach, or if one of our engaged community members were to take issue with that. So
the understanding of what it means when you click agree is something that we've worked on a lot, and understanding that clicking agree means you are agreeing to the terms of use as a contract, and you are signing a contract. And technically in Everett, a teacher is not allowed to sign a contract. It needs to be district leadership. So
does that mean that teacher, because it's in writing that they cannot sign a contract, is taking on that personal liability for
it? It absolutely does. There are very few tools that we have truly not approved, and one of them is because of that, is because the teacher would be taking on the liability. So organizational attitudes is another challenge that kind of comes up, and this is something where North Shore and Everett differs a little bit. Nice aviator icon, Shelby, good find.
Like that?
Yeah. So the SDBC, for instance, I know North Shore utilizes it heavily, and Allen's a big part of that as well. But at Everett, they're a little bit more strict, I discovered when I came on board. And so one thing is that we don't use the standard agreement. We have a little bit of a twist to it that we share out. And that makes for, it certainly puts a little bit more work on us, on me, frankly. But that's a difference there. Parameters are different. Class Dojo is not approved for use in Everett Public Schools, but it is in North Shore. Different reads, different organizational attitudes towards things. And Class Dojo is huge, and that's something we hear about a lot. Why isn't this approved? Why can't I use this? But I have stories of why it's not approved, and they're legit.
Do you ever hear the district is preventing me from doing my job?
Something that I
Class Dojo, so the man is coming to get me, like there's that whole Big Brother.
Anytime that I've been in a PD session and someone mentions that phrase, I always stop and say, just so you know, there's like 4 people in a pretty ramshackle office over there who are wearing jeans and a t-shirt. That's the district. So just remember, the district spilled coffee on themselves this morning. The district had to drop their kids off at daycare. The district spent 4 years in a classroom. Like, we are on the same team.
Yeah, so I like to just turn the question around and say, who do you mean by the district? Like, can you name who these people are? That's usually my response to that. And then there's this like sheepish,
It's people in a dark office going like
we're
this.
Human beings, yeah. I often
Gertz.
I don't know if this is true for you, but I often get accused of making, like, Shelby Reynolds is making decisions in her office by herself. Because I was the one that sent out the email, so Shelby decided. I love that. That's my favorite. Yeah. We do have also some, issues with legacy tools. So an older version of a tool, or a tool that came from a vendor that might have been grandfathered in years ago that somebody's been using for a long time was approved. But now a new tool, either from that same vendor or that does the same thing, is not approved. And that creates some oddities, some challenges. And then it's not on here, and I don't know that we caught this in any of our slides, but I'm going to add a 5th little thing before I talk about purchasing. And that is the phenomenon of the C-suite or cabinet level or executive cabinet level folks making decisions about tools to bring on.
Go do this.
Yeah, go do this. Make this happen. I found this thing. I got an email. I met with a vendor. I want this tool. And the idea of asking, C-suite level folks to go through the DRR process is just it's not tenable. It's not feasible. It's not politically smart. So we definitely have seen over the years, this dichotomy. We're asking teachers and principals and other administrators to go through this arduous process. And then on the same day, we're asked to process a PO for final forms because it's what's needed and it needs to be implemented by tomorrow. Or somebody tells the student services director, we need EverFi right now, and it gets launched, and then the DRR is like an afterthought.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so, and I get it. I mean, there's politics involved, and there's leadership, and there's all that other stuff, and we make exceptions. It's like, we have a DRR process, except when we don't.
Yep.
That happens all the time. And then purchasing. I don't know if this is true for other purchasing departments in districts that are represented here, but we have a purchasing department that tends to have a set of rules. Some of those rules are articulated transparently and some aren't. Some change from time to time, and you don't necessarily know that they're going to change, but there are definitely, and for good reason, there are some rigid expectations for how purchases are processed, the whole procurement thing and signing of contracts and things like that. And vendors are now coming up with these really creative ways to provide content that doesn't nicely fit in the boxes that purchasing departments have created for themselves in terms of, how do we define software as a service? Is it a good or is it a service? That seems to be up to the opinions of either folks who write your school board procedures and policies or the folks in the purchasing department. Is it a good or is it a service? And they're treated very differently when it comes to sole source or bid requirements or things like that. A good example of this is on the next slide, and one that I spent a couple of months meeting with different people about. And I don't know if this is taking root in your districts or not, but there's this new service called Boom Cards, which is basically a sort of like teachers pay teachers sort of deal. There is a content library and you can purchase content from that library, but you purchase using these credits that you buy into in their little marketplace. And so in particular, our special ed teachers found a lot of great content in this service. And one of our special ed folks put in a digital resource review for it to do a purchase. They even have a school purchase program where you can, you buy content or you buy credits that can be shared across the school, and you sort of, buy from this shared piggy bank or something. But this blew the mind of our purchasing manager. I mean, we had like 3 or 4 different meetings where we had to look at how this could work and how this teacher could get at this content, because at the end of the day, she interpreted this to be more like a gift card. And she said, this doesn't match our parameters. So I think to this day, we still are not, as a district, we're not paying anything to Boom Cards, but I would be really surprised if we didn't have teachers out there buying their own content.
I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm getting a headache, and I don't work in purchasing.
Exactly. So what are we doing about it?
We got 3 minutes left, Shelby. Go quick.
We're going to talk so fast.
Yep. One thing that we're doing is we're trying to increase the relationships between the curriculum department and the technology department. Every day I am on Teams pinging different curriculum directors, trying to talk about what's going on, building understanding, building background, and building processes and procedures that follow what we need them to follow. That's been so important, but so that when the next person comes in, it's not starting from scratch. Building in these practices has been so important for what we're doing. Building up the understanding and awareness of data privacy across the district is something that is an ongoing thing. I think for Everett, the next focus is probably going to be on cybersecurity, as it should be. So we're going to be doing a lot about phishing and things like that. But there's always work that we're trying to do, meeting with principals, just building up the understanding of why you need to put in a review and what it is. And I think I'm getting enough tickets coming in saying, I was told I'm supposed to put in this ticket, which to me says, oh, people are listening. People are spreading that information out. Building in that culture. We are all in charge of keeping data private is so important. And then also some new services. So Shelby's going to talk about North Shore's Run on Learn platform and how they use Clever. We at Everett are just starting with GoGuardian, and they have a product called GoGuardian Director that gives us a little glimpse into tools, and we'll talk about that as well.
So as Todd said, we're just beginning to dig into our implementation for Learn platform, which my hope would be replaces the really beautiful but slightly antiquated Google Sheet that Alan Miedemann maintains. It's very colorful. It's got so many lines in it. It's really amazing. But Learn platform is going to take our game up a notch and help us to not only track what's been approved, what's being used that hasn't been approved, what might be supplemental or have conditional use, but also as I understand it, Learn Platform is going to let us be notified when terms might change for a particular vendor. So I'm really excited about that. Plus, it gives us analytics about how much these different things are being used. Now, the one thing that Alan will say is that we're trying really hard to put this service solely into the curriculum department, but my gut tells me so far they don't understand what to do with it yet. So there's definitely going to be some relationship and awareness building with that crew if they're really going to own this piece. I think it'll be more of a synergy between the two of us. And then we're also using clever Edtech Analytics just to get a sense for how much things are being used and how many kind of rogue apps we might have out there and how much those are being used as well, which is really great. It's a really fun tool. And it's a really great way to give a snapshot to our school board who's really interested in that notion of return on investment, which is really tricky, right? Because it's sort of like asking about the return on investment of a pencil. I can do all kinds of terrible things with a pencil. So simply saying that I bought pencils and trying to equate that to an increase in student learning outcomes is sort of a lost cause. But
you also have done terrible things with pencils.
Yes, I have. But that's for another session. But it at least gives us a snapshot of what's being used and gives us a little visibility into the ecosystem that we maintain.
And then just super quick, this is GoGuardian Director, similar idea to Learn Platform. It shows you the users that have used the tool, the amount of hours have been spent in the tool over a period of time, and then how many individual accounts have accessed. And it's only on the specific ones that they have in sort of their tracking library. What's always fun about this is there's plenty of things on this list that have not been reviewed at Everett. So obviously there's work to do. And I believe we were about to be politely interjected upon because we are over time.
Vern, what's your Discord handle?
Who, me?
Yeah, I was going to put it in the
whatever. It's like something stupid. It's like T. Corin.
Your handle is something. Your name's going to be Julia Gulia?
Julia Gulia. My handle is, I don't know what it is. Sorry. Where am I? It's TK Everett.
TK Everett. So we'll put that in the chatty chat if you want to find Todd.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I am either.
Oh. I guess, yeah, look up what yours is. Shelby will put our Discord stuff in the chat and we are easily track downable. If you have questions, we're not running away, but I know there may be other sessions. And we're really happy that you guys were here. I'm really happy that I got to do this with Shelby because working with Shelby, if you haven't gotten a chance to, is kind of the best thing in the world for many, many reasons.
Oh, thanks, Todd. I don't know how to write my handle, but I think that's me. Whatever. You can search for a thing.
Jim, we will post our slideshow. Yes. I'll do that right now. I'm going to stop sharing.
You stop sharing.
Yep.
How about I'll share. I can share. I
sure.
Share. Thanks everybody for coming.
That should be the link to our presentation that anyone with the link can view.
I think there's also there is a channel going in Discord, that has.
Wait, I didn't see that in the slideshow.
Where did that come from?
Oh, I didn't see that.
Channel in Discord for session decks and things like that, session resources.
I mean, I often feel as handsome or more handsome than Tom Cruise. So.
I think the beard does it. Does the beard stick out of your helmet when you're flying?
The breathing apparatus, it just fits right over it.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
You look so happy in that picture too.
I think wasn't that the picture where I was prom night picture with John Biggerstaff?
Yes.
Yeah. I was very happy. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. We really
Thanks, everyone. Come find us on Discord if you want to chat. Is that it? Are we done?
I think so. I'm going to politely end the session. Becky, I see if you're still here, I see you put in some questions. If you're still here, we can totally talk about those questions if you're still around. Do you mind if I invite you to the stage? I'm going to try to do that. Okay, let's see. I'm going to click on this person and I'm going to, maybe I'm not going to invite them to the stage. I don't know how to invite someone to the stage, Shelby. Do you know how to do it?
Oh, it's been a while. Hold on. Raise your hand, Becky. Hand mic.
Now I know how to do that for the next time I never do this again.
Here comes Becky. Hi, Becky.
Hey. Yay, I'm glad you caught that. I was like, they didn't see my questions. Hey, I'm Becky Mesker. I'm the project manager at Highline, and I partner closely with our Tectosa, we use a different term and I always forget, who runs the Digital Tool Review Committee. So I'm closely a part of that process here. And one of the major things that we constantly battle with is what to do about ADA and Section 508. Because we did get our hands slapped by the state, I believe, for one of our products. And so it's something we're very aware of now. Yeah. But, there's no do they have to have a VPAT? Do they have to have everything met on the VPAT? Or just the grade, they have the grading of A, AAA, double,
Yeah.
And so we're constantly, and there's some really good tools out there that aren't necessarily fully ADA compliant. I don't know. So we're constantly in this gamble and having conversations. So I was curious how you guys might tackle that.
I know that it's not a formal part of our review process that Alan and purchasing, for example, go through. I know that it's definitely more part of the curriculum review process. So our curriculum review committee has a pretty extensive list of criteria that they're looking at. And in addition to having non-CMAC members review the content and looking through this sort of list of things to look for, there are CMAC committee members who also have to do a review that has, there's an extensive list of, questions about accessibility and about bias. I mean, there's a lot of scrutiny in terms of representation and inclusion and things like that. Unfortunately, if it doesn't go through that curriculum process, it doesn't get near the same scrutiny as it would if it were curriculum. Yeah. But if we're adopting it as a district platform, for example, like Schoology, it's definitely part of the sort of district vetting. If we're going to make this a core service, we're going to be looking for those things. Unfortunately, I just think there's not a lot of awareness out there among teachers in terms of what even to look for.
Yeah, we have in the formal curriculum adoption process, so they have to fill out, every vendor has to fill out what's called an Appendix E, and it's the technology part. So it's a lot of things that are focused on, does your system integrate? Is it a program that's installed, or is it a software as a service? All that kind of thing. And the last part of it is about ADA compliance and talks about all the different things that you were just mentioning. Now, again, the problem for us is that only happens if it's a core adoption review, which is a massive process that takes months and months. And then the other problem, and I mentioned this in the chat, is our part in that review is purely advisory. So we have said, do not adopt this tool. It is a nightmare to support, and it's gotten adopted, right? So we advise on whether or not something has ADA compliance or not, but beyond that, it's up to the whole adoption committee to move forward or not move forward. And again, that's only if it's the core thing, not on just an individual tool.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Great question.
Yeah, I don't know if so for us, the line is always approved versus adopted and supported. I don't know if that line gives you any leeway or not in terms of how the state sees it.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. We definitely do the full vetting for anything curriculum for ADA. But when we got our review, the person who was a part of it, their understanding was any tool we offer must be accessible by all students. And so we're like, that's a big lift.
You probably got hit with the same OCR complaint that we did when our website got tagged. There was a huge
it was the website.
OCR complaint.
Oh yeah, Everett got that as well. Yeah.
So
yeah, I don't remember. I mean, I helped with the response on that In terms of the website, we developed a lot of training on accessibility and required all teachers to go through it. But it hasn't had the kind of ripples in North Shore that it sounds like it's having in Highline, where like you're looking at every single tool for that set of,
Well, it's not clear. We definitely do it for curriculum and anything public facing. But when it comes to all these one-off tools, I mean, we ask, what is your accessibility? And we'll embed that in our information about the tool.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like we have like a hard and fast line.
Yeah.
And that's what we're struggling with. Like, do we need to? Or can we just say it can work with the Google supports and it can do screen reader? Like, is that enough? So it's just, we're constantly going back and forth.
Does Highline have an assistive technology crew of any kind? Folks that work to define IEP accommodations or to deploy specific technologies for students with special needs?
That's managed. So we don't have someone specific. We have our main SPED central office folks, and they'll pull in techs as needed,
Mm-hmm.
but there's not like an official, at least not that I'm aware of, official group that manages that.
Yeah, North Shore has a kind of cobbled together, maybe one FTE total between like 3 different people we've created a really strong relationship with them from a tech standpoint, and they've been able to at least advise on some tools that we might have looked at and assumed were accessible, and they picked up on things that are specific to students with specific learning challenges or sensory or processing issues or anything like that. So for anybody that still might be listening out in the audience, having that relationship with your assistive tech folks is really, really helpful in that situation.
My director just IM'd me. We have 2 people, so that's
nice.
clearly something I need to connect with.
Yeah, it'd be great to just have a chat with them about that.
Yeah. Becky, your second question about if we block or allow tools that aren't approved or if we block everything. So at Everett, we really block very few things based on the tool. Mm-hmm. So if something is not approved, that doesn't mean we block it necessarily. It just means we don't approve it, and we make very clear why. I think Class Dojo might be blocked in Everett because there was a really gnarly thing that occurred around Class Dojo, but I'm not even 100% about that. If something's just caught by the filter, because we have a pretty strict filter, we certainly won't unblock it if it's not approved, and we'll only unblock it if it is approved, but we don't purposely block things. And that's where you get back to why a tool like GoGuardian Director can be so important, because suddenly you're learning about all these things that are being used that you have no idea about. But again, if someone puts in and we don't approve it, unless there's a safety issue, we don't actively block it.
Yeah, mostly that's true in North Shore too. We've had, maybe in the last 10 years, I can think of 2 situations where we blocked something because more because of something the vendor did and not so much something that a teacher was doing. Like we had a vendor who shall remain nameless who signed a whole bunch of our teachers up for their services without their consent, and then sent them, login credentials. Like, here's your free whatever for blah, blah, blah. And it hadn't gone through a review. We hadn't approved it. And we don't know where they got the information. So we shut that down like real quick and had a conversation with the vendor. I think since then it's been reopened, but that was a really unusual and rare circumstance. For the most part, as I said earlier in the presentation, we don't block things simply because they haven't been reviewed or because they were denied. But we have it in writing that they've been denied, so they shouldn't be used. So.
Gotcha. But for your Chrome applications, is that blocked until you enable?
Yeah,
Everett's pretty strict on those.
Yeah, extensions and apps and add-ons and all of that stuff are managed at the domain level. So we ask, and actually that would have been a good thing to include in the presentation. Our DRR process doesn't just include web-based services; it includes extensions, web apps, all the add-ons and things like that for Chrome, as well as library services. So all of our library database purchases go through the DRR process as well. So all the Gale, ProQuest, all of that, ABC Clio, all of that stuff goes through DRR as well.
The extensions at Everett, this is not necessarily a great thing, but that list I referred to, we do not have every single extension that we've approved listed, because A, there's a lot of them. And B, one thing that my leadership wanted to be sure we weren't doing is encouraging people to go shopping. We didn't want people to go down a list and say, oh, I'm going to use this and this and that and that and that, right? So because our OU setup is, our Google OU is set up via school. So we do have the ability to approve them at the school level or at the entire elementary school level, depending on the request and things like that. More often than not, the requests that we're getting more now are add-on requests for things that come through the marketplace, which is that third extra spot. And since those are usually specifically for teacher use, we handle those more on a case-by-case. We're trying to be more strict about what gets approved that is a Google extension, but because also Google is kind of changing the way they're looking at that. I mean, with their whole app library, and it's really kind of, they're really trying to lock that down, because a lot of those early extensions were just one person in their basement creating a thing, and you're sending thousands of students' personal data to some random person downstairs who runs a random server on AWS somewhere, right? So Google, I think, is locking that down more, and we're trying to be a little more careful about those as well.
Great. And then one last question. Do you enable the Google Play Store or just the Marketplace and Chrome add-ons?
We do not enable Google Play in North Shore. We've been told over and over and over again by a number of sources it's just too hard to manage, too hard to control. And Joe Yamada, if he's here, could speak more to that, but no, it's not enabled in North Shore.
We do have like 3 apps enabled on the Play Store, and it's very, very, very limited. But so if you want to balance that, you know, different organizations, we have a couple of apps open on the Play Store, but we block YouTube for all elementary. Like, there's like, you know, whereas I think it's the opposite in North Shore, where they do allow, I think, YouTube at elementary in North Shore. Yep. So organizational attitudes towards the tool, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks, you guys. This was really valuable for us.
Good.
Oh, great.
I'm really glad. Yeah, reach out anytime. We're happy to continue the conversation.
Definitely.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, everybody. We'll go ahead and end the session.